Welcome to the Beit Din, the court of the Jewish people. In today's case before the Beit Din, a case of family tragedy, Bill and Natalie Levoff are the parents of Ken, a young boy who has died, apparently by his own hand. They ask that the boy be buried in their family plot at Menorah Memorial Park. Mort Cherin, the executive director of Menorah Memorial Park, says that because he was an apparent suicide, he cannot be buried in consecrated ground, and in fact, he has received complaints and concern from other members of his board. The Levoffs come to the Beit Din and ask that the cemetery be instructed to bury the boy in accordance with their wishes. Serving on the Beit Din today are Rabbi Howard Addison, Dayan, Rabbi Moses Meshaloff of Beit Din, and Rabbi Mordecai Simon, Dayan. A case of family tragedy.
Mr. Cherin, you're the director of the Menorah Cemetery.
Yes, I am, Rabbi.
Do the Levoffs have a family plot in the cemetery?
Yes, they have a
They do have a family plot. And did you consult with any rabbi before the decision to withhold part of that family plot from the son? Did you discuss it?
One of our board members is a rabbi, and it was his instruction that this is traditional.
I see. Mr. Levoff, I'm sure that you had a very fine boy in Ken. Did you ever, both of you, sit down and talk with him whether he had problems or?
Very often.
You would both sit down and talk with him?
My wife did, and I tried to. He was very distant, and he was difficult to communicate with.
I see. Natalie, how many hours a week did Ken go to school?
Most of the day.
Most of the day. Did he have a full program of studies?
Yes, he did.
What were his grades?
He did very well.
Did fairly well. Did he have any friends?
Not as many as
Not many.
he could have.
Would you know, Mr. Levoff, whether a school counselor ever had any opportunity to talk with Ken?
We tried to, we spoke to his advisor about getting counseling for him, but we don't know whether a counselor ever spoke to him.
I see. Natalie, did Ken seem to have periods of depression?
I never really took it that seriously. I mean, all kids that age have times when, when they stay in their room, and I just didn't really realize how serious
He was.
I see.
It might have been.
He was quiet.
He was quiet anyway.
Rabbi Addison, would you like to ask a question?
First, on behalf of the Beit Din, we'd like to extend our sincerest condolences to you on the passing of your son. Could you please tell us, were there any changes in your son's behavior, any outbursts and despondency over the last several months?
He was an adolescent. Yes. He got angry. He got sad. He was an adolescent. He should be buried with us.
I see. Please, we understand that omniscience is only a characteristic of God, and we understand that you tried to do your best in raising your son. Mr. Cherin, in the Articles of Incorporation of your cemetery, what does it say concerning the observance of Jewish law and custom in terms of your burial procedures?
It has always been the custom of the memorial gardens that we follow Jewish customs as dictated by our board and as our customers ask us to.
I say a Jewish custom, but dictated by your board or dictated by the authorities on Jewish law, on Beit Din?
Dictated by the board and the rabbinical member of the board as he interprets the Jewish laws.
I see, but you're now submitting this to the Beit Din so that our decision will determine the Jewish law in this
The
case.
Levoffs have asked us to come to the Beit Din, and we're agreeable to such.
Because
I see.
This can't be fair. This can't be fair. God wouldn't punish a child like this. He belongs with us. If he did do this and he was sick and God wouldn't do that to somebody and say God is forgiving and he belongs with his family.
Mrs. Levoff, we will discuss this aspect among ourselves, but could I ask Mr. Charon, did you ever have any precedents of situations asking for burial?
There were, several years ago, there was another suicide, and we had to bury it not in the consecrated ground, but in a special section where we are planning to inter Ken.
Was there ever any consultation with rabbinic authority, or did the family of that individual challenge this?
They did not challenge, no, Rabbi.
We don't know that this was a suicide.
No, we aren't expressing ourselves that way either. We're only trying to determine, in accordance with your request and that of the Memorial Gardens, the proper location.
I don't understand.
His sister.
Mr. Levoff, did the coroner declare this to be a suicide?
No.
Yes, he did. He did. He left a note, but we don't know when that note was written. We don't know if it was at the time he got, the thing is, we don't know for sure it was a suicide. There's no way to be absolutely certain. The child was having emotional difficulties. Why punish him and his family and his sister? Why do this to everybody around him? It's just not fair.
The pressures of school, he's an adolescent. There's no indication that this was a suicide for sure.
Rabbi, I understand the consternation of the Levith, and I know that it's a very difficult time, but I also have a responsibility to all of the other customers of Memorial Garden, those that are already interred that expected to be in consecrated grounds, those that have also bought family plots that want to leave that ground consecrated. And I've received many calls already this morning in regards to this from customers of mine that are very concerned.
What about his young sister who looked up to him as a hero? What about responsibility to her?
We see that this is a very touchy matter. It's not simply a matter of law. We are involved in the sorrow of parents and the tragedy of a young man, and we'll consider all these things when we discuss this matter among ourselves. We'll now retire to make our decision.
Rabbis, it seems that we have in this case something not alone basic, but in which we have long tradition, the horror of the suicide. Our religion, of course, as you very well know, considers suicide one of the greatest of wrongs. The Shulchan Aruch, it said, Hamabed atzmo ladat, urasha she'en lama'ala mimenu. It's one of the gravest of crimes. But we have to consider the circumstances of this suicide. Did he do this willfully, or were there such strains and pressures and tensions that he didn't know what he was doing? The Shulchan Aruch says, for example, Gadol im dereshas hadar machmat ruach ra. The person has done it because of an evil spirit, or shigaon, insanity. In such case, he is not really considered a suicide. The Mitzudat Zion adds to that. In case of suffering beyond one's ability to withstand, he is not considered a suicide, and therefore it seems to me that this case is such that the young man couldn't stand the pressures and tensions, and as she said, admitted, and he too, that he'd have moments when he was very upset and excited and besides himself.
I would say that from the testimony of the parents in particular, that their son Ken seemed to be under tension, school pressures, peer pressures. They just weren't sure about it. They didn't, unfortunately, as I got from their testimony, didn't give him some sort of counseling or direction, or even if they did, it didn't take. And therefore, I would agree with the interpretation that he was in a state of shigaon, temporary insanity, depression, anxiety, which no longer allowed him to react in a rational manner. and again, would take it out of the category of suicide and therefore eligible, if that's the word, to be buried in the cemetery. One other thing that bothered me, rubbed me the wrong way, I think, is the testimony of the chairman or the caretaker.
Yes, the director.
Talked about his customers. Nobody who was interred is a customer. And it is sanctified, holy ground at all times. And the interment of any particular body will not desanctify or declassify it from that category.
Rabbi Addison, what do you think of the sense of guilt that these parents must be bearing?
Well, it seems that obviously this is great. There are those who say that suicide is the only crime in which the perpetrator passes away while the victims continue to live. And in this case, these parents seem to be very distraught. And of course, we tried to console them. It's a terrible problem in American life and Jewish life also. It seems that the pressures that are put on children to achieve external signs of success, be they the proper grades, moving in the proper social circles, are such that oftentimes they become unbearable. It seems also that the parents were not very specific in terms of speaking of the way in which the boy passed away. There was some mention of a note. As we know from Jewish law, a person is not allowed to incriminate himself. There were no witnesses to the act. And the Jewish Court of Law, Beit Din, requires 2 witnesses if we're to condemn an individual. So therefore, I would agree with your ruling, Rabbi Meshloff, that in this case, Ken should be allowed to be buried in the family plot.
Yes, I think we are all agreed that this child should receive the proper burial with the proper preparation for burial as is required by Jewish law.
Rabbi Simon and Rabbi Addison and I have studied this case very carefully, knowing full well the sorrow and the grief in the hearts of the parents, and also the all too great increase in suicides among teenagers. Jewish law considers suicide one of the greatest of wrongs. God has given us a life, we have no right to take it. However, Jewish law does recognize that there are times when a person does things without full realization of what he or she is doing. There are in our life stresses and tensions. There are depression. There are periods of hysteria. And because of that, wherever we have to suspect such a lack of normalcy in the person, we do not consider that person as a willful suicide, and he is permitted to be buried together with everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And so in this case of family tragedy, as Rabbi Meshloff recited, the Beit Din has found that indeed Ken Levoff can be buried in the family plot at Menorah Memorial Park. A difficult and touching problem, a problem that affects not only this family, but so many others in our society today, and an opportunity for the rabbis to interpret Judaism to find both an understanding of the law as well as an understanding of the heart. The case of the family tragedy.
My grandmother said to me when I was a little girl, if you throw crumbs on the ocean, it'll come back to you in a loaf of bread.
The stranger shall not go hungry. And that theme I can remember through my entire life.
It's like the 10 Commandments, you know, that you should not lie, you should not steal, and you must help your fellow man.
It's knowing that I'm helping Jews here and all over the world.
And I received an awful lot in return.
In this session of the Beit Din, the court of the Jewish people, a timely and important issue is presented. Bill Davidson was injured in a car accident. In the course of that injury, he suffered massive head injuries, which caused him to be lying today in a coma, though the rest of his organs and his body are intact. Dr. Philip Berger, a friend of his, discussed on numerous occasions the fact that Bill wanted his organs donated in the event of his death, and should that be a scientific and medical possibility. Lillian Davidson, Bill's wife, says that under no circumstances will she allow that to happen. She is a Jew and she practices Judaism, and she believes that according to tradition and Jewish law that such donation should not occur. Elizabeth Byers comes with Dr. Berger today saying that her husband lies in need of a kidney, that Bill was already matched and could be a fine donor for her husband. She comes with her son, both asking that the Beit Din find the opportunity for that transplant to take place. In this case before the Beit Din, Rabbi Howard Addison sits as Dayan, Rabbi Mordecai Simon of Beit Din, and Rabbi Moses Meshaloff, Dayan, a case of death and life.
Mrs. Davidson, would you describe your association, your life, your married life, as a very, very close relationship in which you shared confidences with your husband?
Yes, I definitely would. We were married for 15 years, and I feel that I know how Bill felt about everything. I know what he wanted for his life, for his children, for me. Yes.
Well, especially under that description, were you aware that Bill had signed this document, his driver's license, to the effect that he, should an accident occur, such as it has, that he wills parts of his body, organs, to others that they might continue life?
He signed that. It's true that he signed that. But he and I, neither of us, who thinks that they're going to die? Who thinks they're going to be in an accident? Who thinks they're going to die when they're such a young man? Bill was a humanitarian. He loved people. He wanted the best for the world.
But
he signed it.
But in the process of signing and the discussion with you, did he ever not say precisely, and to take your own words, as a humanitarian wanting to help everyone, precisely that was the reason that he was signing this document, so that it would relieve you of pressures when, should a situation arise, as it unfortunately has?
He never would have signed it if he and I had thought it out, if we had discussed it, in light of our traditions, if we had realized that it was going to desecrate his body. I want him buried intact. He was in an accident. I'm responsible now. I'm responsible for his children. I'm responsible for preserving his memory. This is my job. I have to do this.
Now, you also indicated that you wanted to act in accordance with Jewish law. Did you confer with a rabbi, any rabbinic authority, in this part of your decision?
No, I talked it over with my family. That's all that I did.
Rabbi Edison?
Yes, Mrs. Davidson, have you ever known anyone who is in need of an organ transplant, who's gone through such an operation?
No, not personally.
But perhaps you've read of such cases and know how life has been preserved through the advances of science.
Of course, and I know that there are dialysis machines also.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Berger, you're a close friend of Bill Davidson, who's now in a comatose state, yes?
Yes, I was. We went to undergraduate and graduate school together. Been friends ever since.
I see. Did you discuss in detail with him the question of becoming an organ donor?
We had discussed it philosophically, and he believed that if he could do something for another person, this would be one of the most effective ways to do it.
I see. Did he ever give any indication that perhaps after he'd signed his driver's license and it was in Boston plastic that he might have changed his mind on this matter?
None to me, no.
And Mrs. Davidson, did he ever express to you a change in his humanitarian outlook, that he might not wish to have any of his organs donated, that he might have undergone such change of mind from the time he signed?
He never expressed a change in his humanitarian outlook. And no, he never expressed any change of mind about having signed his driver's license, but that subject, that specific item didn't come up. Mm-hmm. What came up was his humanitarian spirit. That came through in everything that he did.
I see.
Rabbi Beshalom?
I would like to ask Dr. Berger a few questions. Mr. Davidson is in a coma now. How can you be positive that he will not come out of it?
Well, we can never be positive, but his injuries are massive. And the reason I asked for this case to be heard is if he does happen to die, we would like to operate as soon as possible.
And the second question I'd like to ask is, we understand that Mr. Bayer is in dire need of a kidney. Now, what does that mean?
That would mean that all our technology today could only maybe prolong his life maybe 2-3 more months.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Elizabeth, I'd like to ask you a strange question. Have you ever been before a Jewish Beth Din before in your life?
No, Rabbi, I have not.
No. And you do recognize that different religions go by different principles, and would you respect the right of a different religion to have principles different from your own?
Yes, Rabbi. I actually believe there's just one religion, the religion of all mankind. And I'm saying it not just to say it to you, but it's something my husband and I have practiced. An usher at our wedding was an Orthodox Jewish man, so.
And Sean, I'd like to ask you one question. Do you believe that God is watching over your father and will keep him alive?
Yes, I do.
Well, then, if Mrs. Davidson, Mrs. Byers, Dr. Berger, Sean, we will take under consideration the information which we have received and our discussion with you, and return shortly to render our decision and indicate the course of action that we are suggesting. Rabbis, I see a number of areas for consideration in this particular issue that's confronting us at this time. There's the subject of nivul hamet, dismembering, not showing the proper respect to the remains of the deceased, kavod hamet, how to handle the proper, give the proper respect to the deceased. But also we find we can't really talk about Bill Davidson as the deceased as yet because he still has the flicker of life within him, but he did indicate a consideration, a concern for the welfare of all mankind when he said, should, God forbid, anything happen to me, and this was testified by his wife as well, Lillian, that he was so concerned with everyone else that he would extend himself to help inject the spirit of life to someone. If it was being denied to him, at least he would continue to assist his fellow man in this particular manner. Judaism also has the principle of pikuach nefesh, of being able to extend yourself to the furthest degree if it will indeed perpetuate or save the life of an individual, and particularly so, someone whom we can point to, and in this case, Mr. Byers, saying that this individual in this room at this time, under these circumstances, will be able to benefit and continue life, but only, as we heard the testimony of Dr. Berger, only if he receives this transplant. Everything matched, everything is prepared, and when the occasion happens for Bill's passing, that this would fulfill the basic requirements. Judaism, the halacha is not being transgressed and violated, because we still are aware of that, the limitations, but at the same time, I feel that the parameters of Jewish law permits this particular action of transplant.
It is Dr. Berger's testimony that influences me most, because he stated specifically that Mr. Bayer cannot live without the kidney more than a couple of months, and that the victim of the car accident in all likelihood will not live much longer, and of course the question is only about the removal of the organ after death. I quote from the Compendium on Medical Ethics of the Jewish Philanthropies of New York that says, a kidney transplant, when both kidneys are so diseased that life cannot continue, all rabbinic authorities agree that such a case constitutes danger to life. Therefore, the prohibitions revolving around the dead donor would all be set aside for this overruling consideration of saving life, pikuach nefesh, which I think is exactly what we have to deal with here.
Well, I would agree with that. Of course, according to contemporary responsa, one would not be able to will one's body wholesale to science in perhaps quite the way that was indicated by the comatose individual signing the driver's license. However, in this case, we have a specific recipient that has been designated. He very much needs this kidney. And in addition to that, this would not be a case of t'nai keneged haTorah, that the individual who's now comatose has not set up a condition that would go against the rulings of Jewish
And
law.
therefore, we would rule that the transplant may take place.
Absolutely.
Yes. Mrs. Davidson, Mrs. Byers, Sean, Dr. Berger, the Bet Din has carefully considered the particulars of the case which you have presented to it. It's a very sensitive situation and then also an emotional one. But also, as the participants of a Bet Din, we are being asked to go beyond that and indicate to you on the merits of Jewish law what would be a decision in accordance with the petition which you presented to us. Jewish law does oppose the dismembering of a human body. On the other hand, one of the basic principles of the Jewish faith is that it is required upon everyone to do everything within his or her power at any time to preserve a human life. This is certainly within the parameters of Jewish law and the particulars of this case. Bill never reneged on his feelings towards wanting to help individuals, as by Mrs. Davidson's testimony and that of Dr. Berger, and therefore, in accordance with Jewish law, within its parameters, and in upholding that principle of pikuach nefesh, of saving another life, in accordance with what we consider the personality, the character of Bill, that we indicate approval for, from the Bet Din, for the transplanting of this kidney organ.
Thank you, rabbis.
And so in this case, the Bet Din found that the transplant could indeed take place in accordance both with Jewish law and the wishes of Bill Davidson. The idea that Jewish law seeks to preserve the integrity of the human body was enunciated by the rabbis, but more, the idea of pikuach nefesh, of saving the soul of one who may yet have an opportunity to live, was enunciated as being higher law than that first principle. In this case before the Bet Din, we had the opportunity to see another example of a combination of Jewish law with a sense of integrity for itself and concern for human beings.